Transcendentalism emerged in New England during the industrial and technological revolutions of the 1830s. The spiritual hunger that had given rise in that period to a new evangelical Christianity also inspired this secular Great Awakening among the members of the educated class. William Ellery Channing described Transcendentalism as a pilgrimage from the idolatrous world of creeds and rituals to the temple of the living God at the heart of nature. This movement did not send its converts to churches and seminaries. It sent them instead to riverbanks and mountaintops. The ethos of a generation disgusted with the uninspired thinking based in scientific experimentation and lockstep logic. Transcendentalism can be understood by what its proponents aspired to achieve. It had been a half century since Americans had won independence from England. But Americans had not yet created their own works of philosophy and literature. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had himself resigned his post as minister of the Second Church of Boston, who would give eloquent expression to the movement's highest aspirations. We will walk on our own feet, we will work with our own hands, we will speak our own minds. A nation of men will for the first time exist because each believes himself inspired by the divine soul, which also inspires all men. After Emerson went on to characterize the corpse-cold Unitarian Church as an injurer of man, he aroused the ire of Andrews Norton, also known as the Pope of Harvard's Divinity School, who denounced Emerson's incoherent rants as an insult to reason and religion. Transcendentalism flourished in the intellectual centers of Boston and Cambridge, Massachusetts, and around Concord when Emerson moved there in 1835. Other well-known Transcendentalists included Henry David Thoreau, Bronson Alcott, Theodore Parker, Margaret Fuller. These writers and thinkers met regularly in a Transcendentalist club that Henry Hedge founded in Concord, 1836. When they published their writings in a magazine called The Dial, the movement spread westward. The Transcendentalist dissatisfaction with the political legislation coming out of Washington, D.C. focused on, in particular, on the United States government's treatment of Native Americans and women, its war with Mexico, and above all, its protection and expansion of slavery. Because Transcendentalists believed that at the level of the intuition, all people had access to divine inspiration and truth. Transcendentalism began as a movement in radical opposition to established religion. Emerson embraced what he called a natural supernaturalism, the view that nature, including human beings, has the power and authority traditionally attributed to a supreme deity. After resigning from the Second Church, Emerson resolved to interpret what he called nature's secular scripture. In his 1836 essay titled Nature, Emerson provided Transcendentalists with what Oliver Wendell Holmes described as their declaration of intellectual independence. Listen to Emerson's prophetic indignation come into its own in the essay's opening provocative pronouncements. Our age is retrospective. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers. It writes biographies, histories, criticism. The foregoing generation beheld God and nature face to face. We, through their eyes. After feeling his way into the need for a new vision, Emerson next gives expression to the prophetic powers informing his indignation in a series of questions to which vision gives rise. Embosomed in a season in nature whose floods of life stream round and through us and invite us by the powers they supply to action proportioned to nature, why should we grope among the dry bones of the past or put the living generation into masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? In 1836, Emerson's call to intellectual independence assumed the form of these rousing interrogatives. However, by the time he traveled to Dartmouth in 1838 to deliver a talk on literary ethics to its literary societies, the interrogatives had given way to imperatives. Do not foolishly ask of the inscrutable, obliterated past what it cannot tell. The details of that nature, of that day, called Byron or Burke. But ask it of the enveloping now. The more quaintly you inspect its evanescent beauties, its wonderful details, its spiritual causes, its astounding whole, so much the more you master the biography of this hero and that and every hero. Be Lord of a day through wisdom and justice, and you can put up your history books. Literary historians claim that Transcendentalism died when Henry David Thoreau drew his last breath on May 6, 1862. But don't you continue to hear its traces in the rhetoric of the ecology movement or in the opposition to globalization?